Thank you, everybody. I know you're all very tired and you'd rather be sleeping now, but thank you very much for coming to be with me. I have, you can all keep secrets, I hope. I have a couple of secrets that I have to tell you. And the first is, this is the first university lecture I've ever given, so be nice to me, please. I have no academic standing whatsoever. I do have a degree from Oxford University, but the second secret is this. I never went to the lectures. I thought they were too long and boring. So if you find me too long and boring, there's the door. Don't worry, because it'll serve me right. I never walked in the door in the first place to these lectures. So, those are my two dark secrets. I will also tell you, how many of you are Russian? Hands up, Russian, Russian, I love your country. I was first in your country before you were born. In fact, I was first in your country before your mother was born, probably. And 1971 was the first time I came here, and I have been coming here ever since, and you won't keep me away. I've been on the board of a Russian company for some time. Some of you may know the RBC, television station, business news television station. I'm very proud to say that I was on the board of RBC for 10 years during the first initial rise of that company. So, and I thought I might start, since I don't really know very much about anything, I thought I might start by telling you a little bit about my family history, because it might interest you. Now, somewhere here, do I have a pointer? Can someone give me a pointer? Okay, this picture is taken about 1916. It's in Hertfordshire, which is just north of London. Oh, you are clever. Oh, fantastic. Okay. 1916, isn't technology great? 1916, this man here in a postman's uniform is my great-grandfather, James Osborne. This is my great-grandmother, Lizzie. This is my grandfather, also in postman's uniform. And this is my great-uncle. I don't know the name of the dog, but this is my great-uncle, Corporal in his army uniform. He is Corporal Ernest Osborne. And he was an old contemptible. Can anybody tell me what contemptible means? Anybody? Anybody? Somebody tell me what contemptible means. Well, it means small, puny, not to be considered. And Ernest, my great-uncle, was in the British Army when, in 1914, when the Germans invaded Belgium and then France, and what stood in front of them was a very small British army that Kaiser Wilhelm said was a contemptible little army that he would sweep aside. And of course, being British, they all said, oh good, we are old contemptibles. We will wear old contemptible as a badge of courage forever. And they did throughout their lives. So, there's great-uncle Ernest. And this is a picture of a tin. It's a very nice tin. It comes from 1914. Every soldier, British soldier in the field, received a Christmas present from the lady embossed there, who was Princess Mary, daughter of the King and Queen of England. You can see M for Mary there. And each soldier received a tin like this. It's about 5 inches by 3 inches. And they could have chocolate or they could have cigarettes inside as their Christmas present. Great Uncle Ernest smoked a great deal, so I'm sure he chose cigarettes. And this is the tin that he received. But around the edges, you can't quite see from where you sit, but around the edges are the allies of Great Britain and France as they tried to hold back the German onslaught. And the allies include Montenegro, they include Serbia. I think we have a colleague from Serbia here. They include Australia and Canada and can anybody guess? Russia, exactly. Exactly, thank you very much. And we have a clearer picture here, I think, if I can get this right. There we are, prominently on the right-hand side is Russia. So, next time you want a visa for Great Britain, or the United States, or the European Union, let's say you want to go to France, dear Russian colleagues, just remember that twice in the last 100 years, Russia has been regarded as a close and vital ally to the West. Once in 1914, and once during what you would call the Great Patriotic War, 1942, 1943. So just remember that when it's difficult to get a visa, as it sometimes is, just remember that history has a different story to tell. Okay, that's enough about that. I failed to become a soldier like Uncle Ernest. I failed to become a postman like my grandfather and my great-grandfather. But I went to work instead. I rebelled a little bit, and I went to work instead in the financial publications industry. Specifically, I've spent much of my life, as you heard Sam saying, I spent much of my life at Euromoney magazine. I wouldn't think anybody of you know Euromoney magazine, but if any of you go to work for Sberbank or Veneshtorg Bank or to, I'm trying to think of the biggest bank in Serbia, Komerčni Banka, thank you very much. If you go to work for Goldman Sachs, as I know some of you want to, if you go to work for Morgan Stanley, you will read Euromoney magazine, because it is the magazine of the international capital markets. International capital markets. Can anybody tell me what the international capital markets are? Future finance ministers, do you have your hand up? Oh, come on. Okay, well, what's a market? So, what's a market? Correct, bingo. Okay. Buyers and sellers come together in a market and they sell apples or rhubarb or stolen rare cars to each other. That's a market, right? What's capital? What do I mean by capital? Can you tell me? No? Somebody can tell me. Somebody is a future finance minister here. Capital? Very good definition, but in this case I'm thinking of big sums of money. Billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. That's capital. Big money is capital. And the capital market is where lots of little pieces of money are gathered together. So you have 2,000 rubles in your bank account. I have $100. This chap's very rich. He's got 4,000 rubles. The lady at the back there, she saves her money. She probably has 10,000 rubles. I don't know about Sam here. He spends a lot of money. He probably has nothing at all. But we all have little pieces of money in a bank, or we might have an insurance policy, or we might own a little mutual fund with shares, and a capital market where is all this money is gathered together in one market. So this lad over here, who's very ambitious, I can see, he wants to build a car factory. Where are you from, my boy? Russia. Okay, so you want to build a car factory, right? You've got no money, and you need $100 million to build a car factory. What do? You go to the capital market and you borrow it, right? That's a capital market. Sometimes called a stock market, sometimes called a bond market. But this is what moves the world around, okay? If there's no capital market, there's no factories, there's no ports, there's no railways. We don't have life as it is now, and you will all, trust me, you will all be involved one way or another in the capital markets. So we know what a market is, we know what capital is, and an international capital market is where, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name already, Andre. He wants to build a car factory. There's not enough capital in Russia, so he goes to the international capital market and gets his money, right? You want to build, maybe you want to build a hospital, right? Not enough money in your savings account at the moment at Sparebank to build a hospital that you can run. Never mind, go to the capital market. Same thing with a railway, same thing with an aircraft. Okay, and this is the magazine that writes about the international capital market. Okay, are you with me so far? I didn't found Euromoney. This man founded Euromoney. He is called Sir Patrick Sargent. That's a rather earlier photograph of him. You can see that he is a rather nice man. He likes to drink champagne, and he likes pretty ladies, likes to talk to pretty ladies. He's 92 today. Not today, but this year he's 92. And guess what? He still likes a glass of champagne, and he still likes to talk to the pretty ladies. But Patrick's genius, and it's still genius at 92, was that he thought the international capital markets that we've just been speaking about would go back to where they were before 1914. 1969, he felt he knew that the international capital markets would return to where they were in 1914. Let me show you a rough map. If you imagine in 1880, and you were walking down the Champs-Élysées in Paris with your favorite lover, and you suddenly thought, I must make my savings earn more money, right? I'm quite rich. I'm walking down the boulevard with my boyfriend. It's 1880. I need to earn more interest on my money. Let me go and buy an Argentine bond. Let me go and buy a Japanese bond. Let me go and buy a Russian bond and earn more money. So if you look closely at this map, and I'll use my magic pointer here, if I can do that right. No, I can't. Yes, I can. Look how good I am. Okay, here's Western Europe, right? Germany, Britain, France, piles of money in 1880. Everybody's doing very well. There's not enough place for all that money to be put to work. So look where it pours. It pours into the United States to build railways, to build factories, to build ports, to build ships. It pours into Latin America. Can you see that? Have we got anybody from Latin America? Anybody from Chile? Oh, Chile? Argentina? Chile, okay. Well, you got some of the capital in 1880, but most of it went into Argentina and Uruguay in particular. Can you tell me the reason why the capital went there? Well, it was because of the beef. Because there was refrigeration suddenly, Europe wanted food, and they were building new facilities to handle the beef trade. Now, it poured out, right? It poured out to Australia to develop Australia. The money poured out to Japan, believe it or not. And it poured into Russia. Sergei Witte in the 1880s, 1890s, you can tell me more, finance minister for the Tsar, was industrializing your country. and it used foreign capital to do so. Okay? Remember this, future finance ministers. Somebody's going to run Kyrgyzstan here. Who's the man who's going to run Kyrgyzstan? That's you, isn't it? You better remember this, okay? You're going to need this when you're running Kyrgyzstan. You need development, okay? Okay, this is what happened in 1914. The capital markets died. It died because everybody was at war. Nothing happened. I mean, it's a slight exaggeration. There were some flows. But basically, the whole house of cards fell down. So that the developing countries that needed money to make themselves better got no money. And they got no money from 1914 to 1969. Basically, the capital markets was closed. There was no buying and selling of money. And that began to change around 1969. So, oh yes, the markets closed because there were capital controls, right? Countries said, no, you may not take your money out and invest it elsewhere. You may not. And this, just to show you how that used to work in Britain, this is a copy of the back page of my passport from 1971 to 3, I think. 1972 I can see there. On the back page, every time I went abroad, and I told you I rebelled, I could not stay in my home. I had to travel. It was killing me with boredom where I was. Every time I went abroad, I had to take my little piece of money to the bank to buy rubles, or to buy dollars, or to buy French francs. And it had to be recorded because I was not allowed to take more than £50 out of the United Kingdom. That's a capital control. Yeah? And when you run Kyrgyzstan, do not impose capital controls. They are bad for the economy. So, that gives you an idea of the bureaucracy that I faced. This is another secret. I cheated a little bit because I put some money in my back pocket and I didn't tell the British government that I was taking it out. But nevertheless, those were the rules, and that's my passport, okay? So, capital controls started to go down. Who can tell me who this lady is, please? Margaret Thatcher, absolutely. There's Margaret Thatcher. She did many things, one of which was she destroyed the capital controls in the United Kingdom, free flow of capital now. Many other leaders in the 1970s did the same thing. Actually, George Bush looks like he likes Mrs. Thatcher there, doesn't he? You see the young George Bush? He's looking at Margaret Thatcher like he's rather appealing. Okay, so we went back to the capital markets of the olden days. This is roughly speaking how capital flows today. It still flows to a certain extent out of the UK, and where's my pointer? There we are, out of Europe, into the United States, still consuming a lot of capital, into Southeast Asia. I'm very sorry, let me go back. Here we are. Into Southeast Asia, developing Indonesia and Thailand and so forth. But there's two big changes, okay? One change is Japan is now very, very rich. It's not importing capital. It's exporting it, buying companies in Europe, in the United States, in Southeast Asia. And China is now quite rich too. It's buying... Anybody from China? Chinese colleagues here? Too bad. And you've got China exporting capital as well. So that's where things are now. Here's a boring graph, but it shows you how international capital flows, how the international capital markets have grown. Okay, enough of that. You with me still? Good. Let's keep going. How long to dinner now? Oh, another hour before dinner, children, but we keep going, okay? So, I better tell you about what I was going to tell you, which was how the world is going to be during your lifetimes, right? Well, the fact is I don't know. Of course I don't know what the world is going to be like, but I have some broad outlines of things to tell you. And the first is Don't worry. Be happy. Don't worry. Be happy. You know, during my lifetime, and I'm very, very old, but during my lifetime, there have been all kinds of panics and difficulties. You know, when I was a boy and my dear wife Holly, I'm British, Holly is American, we were both afraid that nasty Mr. Khrushchev was going to blow us up with nuclear bombs. Of course he didn't. We're still here. And later on, there was the oil shortage. Do you remember? You don't remember the oil shortage? Oh, in the 70s, we haven't got enough oil. We're going to all be cold. We won't be able to drive our cars. There's a worldwide shortage of oil. It was a real panic for 4 or 5 years, and we all bought. We used to have big cars, and then we had to buy small cars, so they didn't use so much oil. And we turned down the dial of the central heating. Well, it was all rubbish, wasn't it? The experts were completely wrong. The world is awash with oil. We're swimming in it. We could float boats in it. There's plenty of oil, and always was plenty of oil. There have been health panics. SARS is going to come from China. We're all going to die of this horrible flu. Well, we didn't die of SARS. The scientists blew up this thing. So don't worry, be happy. And for those of you that follow economies, how countries perform economically, the economists will tell you, oh, if you do this, the world will end. For instance, when Britain didn't join the euro, all the economists said, oh, it's the end of the world. Britain will be poor, won't have any money, gosh. And of course, we didn't join the euro and we boomed. We boomed. So, okay, all right, okay. So, that's the first point, right? There's going to be 4 points. So don't worry, we're going to get through this together. We will. Okay, the second, not a very good picture. The second question is, how long are you going to live? Well, now don't worry and you'll be happy, right? How many years are you going to live? How old are you going to be when you die? What do you think? How old will you be when you die? 85. Okay. What do you think? How old will you be? How old do you think you're going to be when you die? Okay, well, you'll get shot in a bar room somewhere, but that's different. Okay. How old do you think you're going to be? 70? Over 100. Okay. Any further bids on 100? Anybody going to live longer than 100? Go on. How long do you think you're going to live? 105. Okay. 108. Okay. I think you're all wrong. I think that many of the people in this room will live to be 120 years old. You're all going to live extraordinarily long lives unless you're particularly unlucky, okay? Some people are going to get shot in a barroom fight. Some people will, I don't know, look the wrong way crossing the road or whatever. Some people in this room are going to be unlucky. But very large numbers of you will live beyond 100. You are quite right. And you are a Brit, aren't you? You're a Brit, I can tell. Where are you from? I was born in Hartford. Oh, that's much posher, much posher. Oh, you're superior to me. Do you know what they call Hertfordshire people? They call them Hertfordshire hedgehogs. My mother used to tell me a little rhyme. Hertfordshire hedgehogs. You know hedgehog, the little animal with the spines? Hertfordshire hedgehog, strong in the arm and thick in the head. That's what my mother used to say about me. So anyway, I think you're going to live a very long time, dear young colleagues. I myself expect to live to be 100, I think, unless I get killed in a barroom fight with this that. And the reason is that medical advances powered by computing power, the enormous leap in cheap computing, memory storage and analytical capability is powering medicine. You don't know this man, you'll forget his name. He is Gregory Riggins. He works at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland, and he is one of the people that's working on cancer. Everybody in this room is worried about cancer one way or another. I don't want it, you don't want it. Well, you probably won't. You'll have a much less chance of getting it than me, because with him and other people in 10 years' time, you'll have an annual blood test. And if there's a little tiny piece of cancer in your body, it throws off little pieces of DNA that can be detected by a blood test, so you'll detect cancer much earlier. The blood test will show it. They'll throw you into the scanner. They'll locate it in your left thumb or whatever, and they'll cut it out, and you'll be done, right? It's over. If you're unlucky and you get cancer that's a bit more developed, that's a terrible picture. He's a very nice man. His name is Stebbings, and he works in London. And if you get cancer today, God forbid, they'll take you into hospital and they'll reach for the chemotherapy and they'll pour poison into you, right, to try and cure you. And it probably won't work. But his work means that in future, you're unfortunate, you get cancer, your cancer DNA will be tested to see how it reacts across a huge number of chemotherapies, so that your particular cancer is matched to the particular chemotherapy that works best. It's already happening. He's at Imperial College in London, and the cure rates are going northwards, okay, very rapidly. And if you have anything a bit more serious than that, this lady, it's a bad picture, but she's a very pretty lady. Her name is Jennifer Dauda. It's an Arabic name, but she's American. She works in San Francisco, and she is one of the leaders of this thing. I'm sorry I wasn't skillful enough to put it in the middle of the screen, but CRISPR-Cas9, let's suppose one of you, and I hope not, has a genetic disorder that gives you, for instance, cystic fibrosis. Tomorrow, not far away, CRISPR-Cas9, that protocol will be able to take that little piece of DNA out of you that is faulty and cure you, right? So you're all going to live a very long time, even longer than this lecture feels like to you now. But okay, so what does that mean? If you're living longer, it changes what? Oh, sorry. Just very quickly, can anybody tell me what this is, other than my wife, Holly Smith? Okay, it's a map, isn't it? It's a map of Kensington, which is the place to live in London, right? It's the richest borough, richest district of London. And that map, it's very big, right? From the bottom there in the south to the top is about 5 kilometers. It's not very large, right? But the catch with all this new medicine is you better be rich, okay? Now, you're all going to be rich because you're all RANEPA graduates, and you're all going to work very, very hard, but you better be rich if you want this medicine, because it's not going to be cheap. So already today, this reads from south to north. The better off people, the very rich people, live in the south of this borough, and the ones at the top are perfectly okay, but they're not quite so well off. The life expectancy of the people in the south of this borough is 12 years longer than the people in the north. In other words, even in this tiny little slice of London, the rich people get the health care, the advanced health care that I've been talking about, and the poor people don't, or the less rich people don't, and the less rich people leave this world 12 years earlier. They have a 12-year less life expectancy. Okay. So all this, I'm talking about demographics. What a big word. Can somebody tell me what demographics is, please? Demographics, sorry? I didn't hear. Well done, well done. It's the studies of statistics of population. How many people are there? Are they boys? Are they girls? How old are they? How young are they? How rich? How poor? Demographics. And in your lifetime, there are going to be huge demographic shifts. And it's going to transform the world you live in all kinds of ways. You don't read much about demographics in the paper. Economists don't like to talk about demographics very much because it's outside their comfort zone. But trust me, this is one of the main drivers of the world that you're going to live in. Let me show you. Okay, now I messed up this. I'm not very good at PowerPoint, okay? I messed it up. But here we have two charts, okay? I'm not going to give you many charts because it's boring. But here we are. Here are population trends. This one on the left, where my handy little pointer is now, is, anybody guess? It's Japan. It's Japan. So here's Japan's population, the blue line, right? Up, 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 until about the year 2000, and it starts to go down, and it's projected to go down and down and down and down, so that by the end of the century that we are in now, Japan will have a smaller population than it did in 1950, just after the war. Now, in other words, the population is declining. This is an extreme example, but this is the kind of chart that I could show you on Germany, on Spain, on Italy. In fact, much of the Eurozone, there is a coming decline in population that's already begun in the developed parts of the developed world. The US and the UK are a little different, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Let me come back to where we are. Sorry. Okay, here's Nigeria. Anybody from Nigeria? We do have Nigeria colleagues. Yeah, look at Nigeria's population. Whoa! What guys they are down there. It's going up and up and up and up. And at least according to this chart, it'll be a nation of something like 700 to 800 million people by the end of the century, right? It's rocking down there. Okay, so that's what's happening. We've got some of the world going down in population, including Russia, I must say, and some of it going up like a rocket. So for Nigeria, I could have put up Indonesia, I could have put up the Philippines, I could have put up Colombia, I could have put up Brazil, I could put up other parts of Africa, right? They're not all as rocking as Nigeria, but they're going up in population, right? Okay, so what does that do? It does this. Okay, now I got the chart right. So here is Japan projected for 2050, right? By age, oh, why do I do this? Okay, here we are. Here it is. Now, this is by age, right? This is this axis is by age, 0 to 100, right? In Japan, you see that by 2050 there will be more old people at the top than there are young people at the bottom. Go to Nigeria in 2050, not so very far away. What will you have? An enormous young population, yeah, and very few old people. That's what's happening in Nigeria. It's what's happening in Brazil and Indonesia, and where can I think of? Ecuador. It's a lot of countries have this profile, and the older countries like Germany and France have this profile, okay? And that leads to something that economists call deflation. Deflation. And deflation is a terrible thing. You Russians, you think, we've got inflation, okay? Prices going up and up and up. But what happens when you're old, right? Imagine you're as old as I am. Very, 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 very old, right? I don't spend much money, right? I have a car. I don't need to buy a car. I have a jacket. I don't need a new jacket. Well, maybe I do need a new jacket, but I have a watch. I don't need a watch, right? I don't need much. I don't spend very much. Now, if you marry him, are you married to him? Okay, suppose you marry him, okay? Maybe you can do better. But, suppose you say, okay, he's okay. You get married and you have children. Well, you need a car, you need a house, you need clothes for the baby, you need clothes for the next baby, you need foreign holidays, you need school fees, you need, right? So you spend. So if you have this in Japan, right, with the old people, miserable old people like me, not spending any money, and not very many young people like you spending on new houses and new bathrooms and new kitchens and all the things that you would like to have, right? It means that there's not a lot of economic activity. Economic activity, buying and selling of things, goes down, right? And what happens when economic activity goes down? Well, prices start to go down, right? I'm not buying a car. You can't afford a car because you're paying such high taxes to pay for my health care. So you can't buy a car. So I've forgotten your name again. Who's the man building the car factory? You, right? You can't sell any cars, right? So what do? You reduce the price of the cars. So what happens when the car prices go down? You want a car, but you know the price is going to go down tomorrow and the next day and the next day. You wait. I won't buy it today, I'll buy it tomorrow because it'll be 1% cheaper. Or maybe I wait 2 days, it'll be 2% cheaper, right? And you get in this deflationary spiral. And I'm not going to bore you with economics, except for the future president of Kyrgyzstan. I know you're not bored because you want to avoid deflation too. But what happens is that things get dull, people don't have so much money, and there is no cure. There is no known cure for deflation, right? In Russia, you're inflating at the moment, right? Rather, prices are going up. Nice Mrs. Nabiullina, your central bank governor, knows the cure. She raises interest rates. Economic activity goes down a little bit. Prices come back to normal. It will happen, right? In deflation, nobody knows what to do. Not the great Federal Reserve Bank in Russia, in the United States, not the Bank of England. Nobody knows what they are doing now. For those who follow the news, they are printing money like crazy. They are printing and distributing money in various ways, and still it's deflationary in Japan. Still it's deflationary in the Eurozone. It's very hard to fix. The last big deflationary period in the history of mankind was, can somebody tell me when the last great deflationary period was? It was the 1930s. What was the cure for the deflation, or what altered deflation? Exactly, thank you very much. So we don't want too much deflation, do we? Okay. So we have a population problem, right? Can anybody guess what the cure is for Japan and Germany and France and the other countries? What's the cure? What's the cure to having a declining population and a population that's growing older and older and older? Migrants, thank you very much. Absolutely. Now, you've all seen pictures like this. Here are people struggling to get across the Mediterranean and get into Europe. And I think these people are heroes. They're heroes. And we need more of them in Western Europe. We frankly need them in Japan. You know, these people are desperate. They have no money. They've given their last $1,000 to smugglers. They risk their lives. Probably 15% of people in boats like that die as they try to get across the Mediterranean to get a better life. They know that when they get on the boat, they know they may die, and yet they come across in great numbers. And what happens to those people when they get to the lands that they're going to? By and large, they succeed. They become economically very successful. And the reason is this: if you live in some awful, difficult place, Iraq, if you live in Chad, if you live in Niger, if you live in Afghanistan, and you want a better life, if you're fat and you're old and you're lazy, you do nothing, right? But you and people like you, young people like you, desperate for a better life, right? Desperate for more money, desperate for more fun, desperate for a better house, desperate for a more interesting job. Those people feel exactly that way, and they are so desperate that they risk their lives to come across. And Europe's had two reactions. There's one reaction of Hungary and Macedonia, and to an extent Austria. No, we don't want you. We don't want you. Stay out. Stay out, Syrians. Stay out, Afghans. Stay out. But this lady, can anybody tell me who this lady is? Mrs. Merkel, leader of Germany. Absolutely. She said, we will take 1 million of these unfortunate but ambitious and brave people from Syria and Iraq. And she took a lot of political criticism for it. And there were many difficulties for her. But I think she said that, and she didn't do it because she's nice. She didn't do it because she thought those poor people on the boat. She did it because she knew that Germany was just on the edge of a steep decline in population, and just on the edge, therefore, of deflation. And what the economy needed was more labor, more activity, more buying, more ambition, more life. And the people on the boat could bring that. Okay, now we go. I'm very tired and very old, so I'm going to make you do some work now. About time you did some work. Okay. Who is this? Can somebody tell me? Anybody from China? Who's from China? You from China? Ah! Whereabouts in China are you from? Beijing, Shanghai, Chengdu? Beijing. Well, you know who this is, don't you? Okay. Xi Jinping, the leader of China. So China now, today, is probably the second largest economy in the world. And by economy, I mean that an economy isn't the addition of all the all the economic, all the buying and selling and doing in a country. That's the economy of a country. China is probably the second largest in the world. And possibly, and the number one economy in the world is United States. Thank you very much. Soon to be led possibly by this man. Anybody recognize this man? Mr. Trump, okay? Mr. Trump is there on the screen because I could not think of another picture to put on there to represent the United States, okay? But there is Donald Trump. Now these two countries, the two largest economies in the world, are in a way in competition with each other, right? They both want to be number one. Now, some people worry that there's going to be a war between China and the United States. I do not worry about a war between China and the United States at all. I don't think it's going to happen. But it is interesting. This is a kind of contest. You've been talking about conflict. I don't think this is a conflict. I think this is a contest between China and the United States. And have a look at this. I promised you not many charts, right? But that's, the red line is the United States, and the blue line is China. And that is the size of the economy measured by purchasing power parity. Don't worry about purchasing power parity. It's not a measure used very often, but I show you this chart because it shows that China and the United States are now very close in their competition to be the biggest economy in the world, right? Now, one of the key questions in your lifetime will be, who wins, right? Will it be China? Will it be China? Maybe. Will it be the United States? And I don't know. But what I can do, and what you can do, is you can balance the advantages that the United States has in this contest and the advantages that China has in this contest. And I have a little list of those, but I'm not going to tell you. Because I want you to think. I want a break for 5 minutes. I want a drink of water. And I'm going to leave you for 4 or 5 minutes. And I'm going to call on my friend, Professor Sam, here to help me. And I'm going to divide the room. Here is the divide. This side of the divide, you are all Chinese. All of you are Chinese for the next 5 minutes, okay? And here on the other side of the room, these people are Americans. Right? Right? They're not Kyrgyzstanis anymore, they're Americans for the next 5 minutes. So I want the Americans, and you can talk among yourselves, stand up if you want, and write on pieces of paper. People don't write on pieces of paper anymore, do they? They just have these little things that they write on now. I want you to just think of the advantages that you have as the United States in this contest with China to be the biggest economy in the world, and the disadvantages that China has, right? So your advantages and China's disadvantages. And my friend from Beijing is looking at me like I'm completely crazy. Well, that's probably true. But on this side of the room, you're American, you think of China's disadvantages and America's advantages, and over here, you're Chinese. So I want you to think from your own general knowledge and your own reading and your own internet searching in the next 5 minutes, if that's what you've got there, the advantages that China has and the disadvantages of the United States. And I'm going to have a drink of water. Okay, 5 minutes. Sam, you organize that for me, would you? Okay. All right, toes up. Attention, everybody. Okay, shall we start with China? I need a China spokesman, please. How about you? Come on. Somebody tell me an advantage that China has. Okay, go. Made in China. That's quite right. Enormous manufacturing power because of relatively cheap labor. Yep, well done. Please. Tell me. Hardworking. Okay. Yep. Agreed.
And because their mentality, they always reach their aims and don't stop in the middle, and they just prove their opinion and get the aim, what they want.
Very directed, very hardworking. Okay. Yes, please, over here. Shout out or take the microphone.
Since our GDP per capita is much lower than the United States, our national demand is going to increase in the following years, for sure.
That's a very interesting point. Thank you. So what our hidden economist down here is saying is that because Chinese people have relatively little wealth, relatively few cars, relatively few washing machines, they need better housing, that economic growth will be faster. Okay. Is there any?
Yeah, I think China's population is also an advantage. They have over 1 billion people. So a larger population is a larger workforce.
Yes, correct. Correct. Absolutely correct. Good point. Okay. Any disadvantages that the United States has? Yes, please. Strong
decline in the number of jobs in the industrial production. Second, globalization. Third, leakage of jobs to countries with cheap labor. Fourth, stiff competition. Technologies with Asia and the United Union. Lower saving quota than the other competitions. Fans speculative markets and common short-term goals.
Okay, very good. Thank you very, very much. Oh, I've got 2 microphones now. Okay, any other comments? Any other? Please.
Maybe beginning wars all over the world.
Beginning of wars all over the world? Well, that's possible. Wars are always possible. I'm sorry, I might not understand. You were saying there might be wars around the world. Conflicts? That's possible. So is the US sponsoring wars or is China sponsoring wars? Please.
United States have a higher standard of life.
Yes, they do. They do. At the moment, they do. Please. The United States has many debts. Yes, that is true. They have enormous debts, but and they owe China those debts, right? But those debts are in US dollars, right? They owe US dollars to the United States. So the US, or the United States owes them US dollars, right? They bought government debt. And the US can say, well, they're dollars, we can print some more, no problem. In other words, they can debase the currency.
And there's like a slowing development attempt because of very high social tensions in the United States between the many social groups.
Good point. Very good point. There are social problems in the United States, and some of them are extreme social problems. Please.
Maybe one more advantage for China and Chinese people is that they are so inventive, and They're like innovating new things, and they have all you can think of. And they have a really good trade economy.
Yes? Okay. Let's talk to the United States over here. Who's going to lead off, please? Oh, no. Former Kyrgyzstani president, now US spokesman.
Yes, disadvantages, да, будешь? Хорошо. Let's start with advantages of United States. So 13 out of 100, the most important inventions of the last century were invented in the US. We have the biggest cultural heritage nowadays, the pop culture, whatever. We have the most high-tech country. Our IT resources are the biggest in the world. Our natural resources and natural reserves are very good. We have lots of financial levers. We can affect lots of economies all around the globe. Our human resources, that's our asset as well. We have the best educational system. The best minds from all over the world come to study in here. Our geographical location is our advantage as well nowadays, because we can preserve immigration and whatever. Probably we'll build a wall from Mexican immigration as well. So that's our advantage as well. We have the strongest army in the world. That's our advantage.
Yes? Okay.
Let's move to disadvantages of China.
We have a huge influence in the European Union, and
Talking about advantages of the US, as it's known, it's all created in the US, but it is made in China. So I mean the technologies. Even if China wouldn't like to work with us, our, I don't know, maybe this is incorrect the word, I mean patent on some technology, on some innovative, they are all rights reserved to the US. Mm-hmm. So that's why we may just find another market like India, like what else? Like Portugal. So these countries like Portugal, India, they are also producing some things. Mm-hmm. So let's move to disadvantages. Ah, no, sorry.
Okay. I would also say that they also have a lot of young people, and they're very passionate, as we know, or we're very passionate as Americans. And they have resources sort of split. So the further north you go, they're more skilled in terms of their labor. And the more sort of south you go, they have the resources, more of the like coal, so perhaps back in the time, migration between...
In the United States?
Yeah. Right. So I think migration within the US has been arguably the major driving point of their economy, because they move around from state to state so much. They're very open to other... they try to be open to other economies. And I think this is arguably the biggest driving point for them.
Okay. Do you accept that?
Excuse me. One more for advantage. Once we made the world to sell oil for American dollars, so we made the whole world to change their gold standards to dollars. You know what I mean? When the US made Saudi Arabia in, I do not really remember, 60s or it was 80s. And so they started to sell oil in dollars. And so the whole world sells oil in dollars, yeah.
Let me restate that point, because I've heard nothing I disagree with. You're all very well informed. I'm surprised how well informed you are. But this point, if I can restate your point, is that the dollar is now the world's reserve currency. Which means that oil is priced in dollars, many goods are priced in dollars, and countries, including Russia, keep their savings in dollars, and it's another long, boring lecture, but there are enormous advantages in being the reserve currency of the world. And China is trying desperately to make the renminbi, their currency, also a reserve currency. And they may succeed. You can have more than one reserve currency, but that's a very clever point. I'm conscious that I'm hungry and you're tired. Can we have one last person here? Disadvantages. Okay, go with disadvantages.
So we consider that overpopulation is a disadvantage because it causes a lot of social problems, and we would like to say about migrations. I mean, within the China, from rural area to urban. So there are cities such as Peking, Beijing, Shanghai. They are all populated, and there is the problems with air pollution, and healthcare is not enough for every citizens. Moreover, we would like to notice that production. Okay, not all production is made in a good quality. So we remember that we know that some Chinese goods are like a fake. So it's about bad quality. Mm-hmm. And does somebody want to add something?
An advantage here, okay.
US number one in space, and I think so the future belongs to the countries that explore space because we are lack of natural resources.
Could be. Russia was first in space, absolutely. But both Russia and America have an advantage because of that. Okay, shall we move on? But terrific, thank you very much. I really wanted to test how well informed you were, how much you read the news, how much you have a sense of the world geopolitically, and I'm impressed. I think that you are all very well aware, and all of the things that you said have a validity, okay? But let's just finish up quickly because you had a better list of advantages and disadvantages than I had. But one advantage, if we go back, is that this man has much more power than this man will have, okay? Xi Jinping has very, very wide-ranging powers, and if he thinks that it's in the public good to build a railway through your farm, I'm sorry, you're going to have to leave your farm, okay? He has very, very wide powers. This man, although everybody is afraid of him becoming the United States president, don't worry, the US president has relatively little powers. The US Constitution, which I think is a very bad constitution, ties him up in all kinds of ways, and there's usually very little that a president can achieve, and he certainly won't have the power to build a wall across Mexico. So the way that, in a way, China has that advantage. I have the disadvantage of not working this very well. China now has the best infrastructure in the world, even better than in Kazan, which is very impressive. High-speed trains crisscrossing the country. They go 300 kilometers an hour, and your coffee in your cup does not even shake. They are so steady. So infrastructure in terms of airports, in terms of seaports, in terms of mobile phone coverage, which is now much better than in Beijing than it is in New York, there are infrastructure advantages. The United States, infrastructure, by and large, is not very good. And any of you who have been to Kennedy Airport or Penn Station will know that infrastructure is not much good. They also have somebody mentioned social problems. Probably the biggest social problem is this. There is an obesity epidemic in the United States. I'm sorry for these unfortunate people, but it means a huge public health crisis, because if people get very overweight, those unfortunate people get diabetes, they need new knees quicker than ordinary people. It's a huge problem in the United States. But, I think that China has some distinct disadvantages. Can anybody tell me what those dates mean? Can anybody tell me? Can anybody tell me? I will tell you. These are the dates of the major civil disturbances in China in the last 160 years, right? 1850 to 1864, the Taiping Rebellion. 1900 is the Boxer Rebellion. 2011 is the beginning of the Republic, if I'm right. 1927 to 1936 is the first phase of the Civil War in China. The peace in 1946 to 1949 is the second phase of the Civil War in China. The peace in between is where the Chinese were united and fought the Japanese to get the Japanese out of China. 1958 to 1961 is the Great Leap Forward, and 1966 to 1976 is the Cultural Revolution. All of them are huge upheavals in China. It's a very, because of the geography of China and the huge population dispersed over a wide area in very big cities, it's a naturally volatile place. And Mr. Xi Jinping and his colleagues, their number one goal is not to fight the United States. Their number one goal is not to have another civil disturbance. And so it's a fragile country in that sense. Okay. Also, somebody mentioned population, correctly saying it had a large population, China, large population advantage, and indeed that is an advantage. But to go back to the charts I was showing you earlier, this is the projection for China's population, that it is peaking about now and will decline quite sharply during the rest of the century. Can anybody tell me why? Why would China's population decline? I can't hear you. Gynecology? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Tell me. Correct. Correct a second time. Thank you very much. It's because there was a one-child policy for much of the post-war period, and it meant, whoops, I've got a rocket there. There we are. Okay, let me come back. Let me come back to the right. I've lost my way on this. But one-child policy, yes. And that means that people only have one child, so there are less children in the next generation. Now, can somebody help me get back to the beginning here? I've lost my way. I've lost my way. Oh, that's the beginning. Oh, there's a lot of things to go through here. Can you get me almost to the end? Help me, dear colleagues. There's Patrick. There's my passport. There's demographics. Oh, and it stopped again. Okay. No, that's the end. No. Okay. Hang on a second. I'm not at the end. Not at the end. Okay. All right. Can I go back from there? I can go back from there. Okay. So we're just talking about China declining in population. China also, over the next 50 years, will the number, the red line is productive people ages between 15 and 64. declining as a proportion of population and rising in the United States. Why would population and the number of young people rise in the United States? Can anybody tell me? Why is the United States growing in population? Immigration, right? So walking across the border, God bless the Mexicans, God bless the Ecuadorians and the Peruvians. They are walking north across the border just as people are coming across in boats across the Mediterranean. And the United States doesn't realize it, but that's the reason that the United States continues to be prosperous. Okay, very quickly, I'm going to do this in 3 minutes. This is how Americans think of themselves: free, untrammeled by government interference, self-reliant. If you don't like it, get out of my way. I'm an independent person. They are not. It is the most... They're a bunch of namby-pambies, actually. They are not like this. This self-image is entirely wrong. They're very much a socialist and government-supported economy. They're all proud that they all own their own houses. And the reason is the housing market is subsidized. The mortgage market is subsidized. And there are lots and lots of directed, hidden subsidies in the United States. What do you think this is? Wrong. Try again. What is it? It's a subsidy. It's a flying subsidy. It's a government help for computer industries. NASA thinks it's building spacecraft to go to the moon and Mars and so forth. And what it's really doing is supporting the huge technical industry in the United States. In all kinds of ways. Somebody said earlier, I think it was over here, that the technological advances are in the United States, and indeed the medical advances are in the United States. That's why the pharmaceutical companies there and all the major American computer companies are there. It's because it's subsidized, okay? 2 last points, and I'm doing this for the future finance minister and the future president of Kyrgyzstan, okay? If you, and you will, start a new company, right? Some of you want to start new companies. You will need early stage capital, so-called venture capital. Take a look at this chart. The blue piece is the venture capital available in the United States, and the rest of the world is the small piece, right? There's a bit in Europe. There's almost none in the rest of the world. That's why all these new companies come up. And can you tell me why the United States dominates the venture capital industry? You've got it. It's because it's subsidized. Something called the Small Business Administration began in the 1950s. Every year pumps guarantees into small companies. That's why the venture capital industry is so big. If you've got a new company in Russia or a new company in Chile, you fight for your early capital. In the United States, they knock on your door and say, please, can we give you some capital for your new little company? It's incredible. There are 30,000 startups in the San Francisco area alone. And this is the reason, through subsidy, the United States has the vast bulk of the venture capital industry of the world. And last slide, we're done. That, when your company is big, you will want to take it on the stock market. So instead of one factory, you have 19 factories, right? You will need stock. You'll need to sell shares in the capital market. Where is the capital market? Well, it's dominated by the United States, right? So that leads me to believe you will live in a United States century, just as I've lived in a United States century. That is the end of the tour. Thank you very much, everybody. I think it's dinner time, right? Okay. Well, look, if anybody wants to discuss a bit more with me, I'm here this evening and tomorrow. I'm very happy to talk to anybody. Thank you very much.